No one believed in humans anymore. Not really. They were stories told in hushed tones, myths from the days when the stars were still wild and uncharted. The young ones laughed them off, tales of creatures so stubborn, so violent, and so wildly unpredictable that the galaxy itself was said to have pushed them out, erasing their existence like a bad memory. The elders, though? They never laughed. They didn't speak of humans often, but when they did, there was always a pause in their voice, a flicker in their eyes, like they remembered something they'd rather forget. Among the Azari people, the story of humans was like a bedtime ghost tale. "Don't lie, or the humans will come back," they'd say to naughty children. "Don't cheat the trade markets, or you'll end up like the Var Dominion. The humans didn't spare them either." But that was all it was. Folk tale. Until the silence broke. It started with a signal. Just a weak transmission picked up on the outer rim of Sector X-12, close to what was known as the dead space. A transmission that repeated one phrase over and over: "This is Earth Command. We are returning." Most brushed it off as static, a prank, maybe a leftover automated probe from a forgotten war. But the Zarn Intelligence Collective picked it up and didn't like what they heard. Machines don't fear stories, unless they come with data. And this signal carried metadata that didn't make sense. The code embedded in it was human, or at least something terrifyingly close. So the collective sent scouts, then battlecruisers, then an entire drone fleet. None of them came back. That's when things got serious. The Galactic Accord met in emergency session, the first time in over 6,000 cycles. Every species showed up, even the ones who hadn't left their homeworlds in centuries. They debated. They denied. They panicked. And then the warships arrived. They didn't look like anything the galaxy had ever seen. No curved elegance, no polished chrome, no unnecessary design. Just dark, massive monsters, engine trails that burned like dying suns, hulls that looked like they'd been carved from black stone. No insignias, no greetings, no demands. They didn't need to speak. One by one, orbital defenses fell. Silent, precise, not just destroyed, humiliated. Whole fleets blinked out of the stars without ever getting a lock. AI cores went dark. Fleets surrendered before even seeing the enemy. Rumors spread like fire. They don't use shields. They are shields. They upload viruses through quantum space. They took down a worm gate without firing a shot. By the time the ships reached the capital world of Velmora Prime, the galaxy wasn't laughing anymore. And then came the message. One broadcast in every language, every code, every neural interface and auditory channel across the stars. It said, "You erased us. You hunted us. You wrote our extinction into your history books. We were myths to you. Now we are memory. We are back, and we do not forget." Panic turned into terror, but amidst the chaos, some remembered. The old Azari priestess, eyes clouded with age, whispered to no one in particular. They warned us. The humans don't come to talk. They come to finish. Far away, on a mining station orbiting the ice planet Tyrix, a young mechanic stared out the viewport. His hands trembled as dozens of black silhouettes cut across the stars like blades. He'd grown up thinking humans were just a joke. Now he couldn't stop shaking. The silence after that message was worse than the destruction. Velmora Prime stood still. Billions of citizens held their breath, staring at the sky like waiting for a second sunrise. Only this time, they knew it wouldn't bring warmth. The human fleet didn't fire, not at first. They hovered, watching, like predators studying prey. The Accord's top minds scrambled, trying to understand their intentions, but none of their models worked. Humans weren't acting with logic, or at least not the kind galactic civilizations understood. "They're waiting for something," said Admiral Karen of the Threx Dominion. maybe surrender. But others disagreed. The humans didn't come for surrender. They came for something else. High Chancellor Dovrax, leader of the Galactic Accord, ordered a message to be sent. Diplomatic, respectful, desperate. It began with, "We welcome you back," and ended with, "Let us coexist in peace." The humans didn't answer. Instead, one of their ships broke formation. It moved slowly, deliberately, toward the moon of Velmora. The moon held the Accord's War Museum, a place dedicated to past conflicts, including the so-called human cleansing, an event now known to be far less one-sided than records claimed. The ship didn't fire at the moon. It opened a bay door. A single object dropped. No weapon, no bomb. A statue. It landed hard enough to shake seismic sensors across the hemisphere. When drones approached, they saw it clearly. An obsidian figure, shaped like a human warrior, armored in old Terran design. At its feet, engraved in flawless common galactic script, were 6 words. "We bury the lies with fire." That was when the first real wave began. Human drop pods screamed through the atmosphere. Not thousands, millions. Black spheres slicing through clouds, landing across military outposts, communication relays, old battlegrounds. Each carried 1 or 2 soldiers, tall, armored, faceless behind reflective visors. They didn't speak. They didn't broadcast. They just moved with terrifying precision. And they knew the terrain, every bunker, every shield pattern, every emergency protocol, because humans never forgot what was done to them, and they never stopped planning for payback. Admiral Karen launched a counterattack from orbit. Her cruisers opened fire, sending plasma bolts toward the drop pod zones. But nothing hit. The humans' ships projected some kind of distortion, a black mist that bent light and signals. Her own fleet systems began glitching. One by one, the ships turned cold. No explosion. Just silence. Inside the Accord war room, panic turned into paralysis. Ministers shouted. Generals wept. Chancellor Dovrax stood frozen, watching as his empire unraveled, not through negotiation or siege, but through a methodical unraveling. The worst part? There were no demands. The humans weren't here for territory. They weren't here for reparations. They were here to erase the myth, to remind the galaxy. We were never your story. You were part of ours. And in the mining station above Tyrix, the young mechanic, Rez, found himself drafted by a force he didn't understand. The humans hadn't touched Tyrix yet, but their ships hung above the planet like executioners waiting for the rope to swing. Rez watched as the local governor tried to send messages to the human ships. No response. Then came a flicker on the screen. A single word. Survivors. No one knew what it meant, but Rez felt something in his gut. This wasn't a war of revenge. It was a reckoning. The word survivors didn't make sense at first. It hung on the monitors like a warning written in blood. Cryptic, cold, final. People across the station whispered theories. Maybe the humans were identifying themselves. Maybe they were looking for their own kind left behind. Or maybe, and this sent chills down Rez's spine, they were searching for collaborators, those who had helped erase them. Tyrix had always been a backwater planet. Icy, isolated, only good for mining rare crystals. It wasn't part of the human cleansing wars, at least not directly, but after that message the governor's face went pale. He locked himself in the control room and refused to speak to anyone. Rez watched the broadcasts like everyone else. Footage leaked from Velmora showed human infantry, silent, fluid, almost like ghosts, moving through cities untouched by fire. They didn't destroy everything, just certain things. Statues, libraries, government buildings, especially anything that contained official history. Entire archives were erased, wiped clean, not hacked, not burned, erased, No trace left, no backups. It was like the humans were removing the lie at its roots. Back on Tyrix, tension thickened. Ships stopped coming. Communications were jammed. The station's upper class started hoarding supplies. Armed guards appeared at exits. The miners, people like Rez, were told to keep working. But no one believed in the system anymore. One night, Rez was fixing a damaged coolant line in sub-level 9 when he stumbled on an old maintenance panel behind a bulkhead. It hadn't been used in years. Curious, he pried it open and found something strange. A body, or at least what was left of one, mummified, wrapped in rags. The bones were strange, longer limbs, broader shoulders, a single dog tag hung from its neck. J. Navarro, United Terran. Front Rez stumbled back, heart thudding. A human? He didn't call security. He didn't even tell his co-workers. Something in him screamed to keep quiet. He took the tag and left the body untouched. Later that night, he stared at it in his bunk, tracing the letters with his thumb. How had a human corpse ended up on Tyrix? The next morning, the human ships moved. One descended into the lower atmosphere, directly above Tyrix Station. No weapons deployed, no troops dropped, just a signal. "We are aware." 3 words, that was it. But those 3 words shattered whatever illusion remained. The governor tried to flee. His shuttle exploded before it left the hangar. Then came the second broadcast. It was a recording, years old, buried in a file that shouldn't have existed anymore. The governor, much younger, laughing in a bar on Velmora, bragging about cleaning up a crash site, one where some filthy Terrans tried to hide. He spoke of burying bodies in Tyrix tunnels. Rez watched in stunned silence. So did everyone else. Suddenly, Tyrix wasn't innocent. It wasn't a forgotten rock. It was a graveyard, a secret one. And the humans knew. Rez understood now what survivors meant. The humans weren't looking for allies. They were looking for the truth. For those who survived the cleansing. For the ones who hid. And maybe, just maybe, for those willing to remember. Outside, the human ship hovered, unmoving. Its black hull gleamed with frost and firelight. Rez stared up through the cracked dome of the station and whispered, "What do you want from us?" The answer didn't come in words. That night, every system on the station shut down, and a figure appeared in sub-level 9. Alone. Human. He stood there, surrounded by silence, like the whole world had stopped spinning just to watch. Rez had never seen a human before. Not in real life. Only in old, distorted images, tall shadows in dusty archives, faces blurred by time or erased entirely. But this one was real. He wasn't wearing the black armor like the others. Just a simple dark coat, worn boots, a utility belt, and something strange on his shoulder. A symbol, 2 broken wings, wrapped around a burning star. His face was unreadable, calm, but with a weight behind his eyes, like he carried 1,000 stories no one wanted to hear. Rez didn't move, didn't breathe. The human raised a hand, not in threat, but something closer to acknowledgement, maybe even peace. Then he spoke. "You found Navarro." Rez's throat tightened. The dog tag. The body. How did he... "You carry it," the man added, glancing at Rez's chest. "We can sense our own." Rez pulled the tag from under his shirt, slow and careful, like it might explode. The man took a step forward, boots scraping against the metal floor of sub-level 9. "He wasn't supposed to be here," Rez managed to say. "None of us were supposed to be anywhere," the man said, voice low. "Not after what they did." Rez swallowed hard. "Why are you here? I mean, why now?" The human's gaze drifted upward, as if staring through the layers of steel and rock, all the way to the stars. "Because it's time," he said. "The truth rots in shadows. We're here to burn it into the light." Rez's mind raced. Tyrix was nothing. Forgotten. It didn't matter in the galactic scheme. But now it was on the map, and not in a good way. "They'll fight you," Rez said. "The Accord. They'll send everything they have." "They already did," the man replied flatly. "And they lost." Rez's stomach turned. "So what now? You just erase us, like they did to you?" The man looked at him, eyes steady. "That depends. Were you part of the lie, or part of the silence?" Rez didn't have an answer for that. He didn't even know what it meant. All he knew was he was a mechanic who found a corpse he shouldn't have, and now he was standing in front of something bigger than anything he'd ever imagined. The man turned. "There are more like you, ones who've seen the cracks, the holes in the stories." He paused. "We're not here to conquer. We're here to correct. And if that means burning down the systems that kept the lie alive, so be it." Before Rez could respond, the lights flickered. Then a siren. A low, moaning tone that hadn't been heard in decades. Unidentified life-form breach. Central AI offline. Emergency lockdown initiated. Rez's comm buzzed. Voices screamed across the channel. "They're inside. Not soldiers, civilians. They're opening doors from the inside." Rez looked at the man. "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything," the human said quietly. "They did. Your people. The ones who remembered. The ones who waited." A second figure stepped out from the shadows behind him. A woman. Shorter, sharper. Scars down her neck. Her eyes locked onto Rez. "He's clean," she said. The man nodded. "Then let's show him." Rez followed them. He didn't know why. Curiosity? Fear? Maybe something deeper. They led him through old mining shafts, into sealed chambers no one had entered in years. There, behind layers of rusted doors, sat relics of a past denied. Terran banners, crates of forbidden data, and in the middle, an old communications rig, blinking softly. The woman touched it gently. "We've been waiting a long time," she said, "but it's not just about revenge." She turned to Rez. "It's about memory." Rez had never seen tech like this before. The room was buried deep, far below Tyrix's mapped levels. It was ancient, sealed behind bulkheads coated in frost and carbon scoring, like someone had tried to destroy it, then gave up. The rig itself looked half dead, barely humming, with wires snaking out like veins into old crystal cores. And still it worked. The woman knelt beside the console. Her fingers danced across the dusty interface with practiced ease, waking it from its coma. Rez watched in silence, unsure if he was a prisoner or a witness. "This was Navarro's final transmission point," she said without looking up. "The last thing he did before he died was send a signal. We think it never reached anyone. Until now." Rez finally spoke. "Why would he come here? Why Tyrix?" The man, who still hadn't shared his name, leaned against the wall, arms folded. "Because Tyrix was neutral, a blind spot. And because someone here helped him." Rez blinked. "Helped him?" The woman nodded. "Navarro didn't crash here by accident. He was guided, smuggled through mining lanes off the record. Someone in your station risked everything to protect him. We're here to finish what they started." Rez felt like the air had thinned. None of this made sense. His whole life had been about keeping things running. Pipes, lights, machinery, not uncovering buried history, not standing in forgotten catacombs with the ghosts of a species erased from textbooks. "But what are you finishing?" he asked, taking a slow step forward. The man finally pushed off the wall. "The story. The real one." The screen blinked. Then, grainy at first, a face appeared. Tired, bruised, but unmistakably human. It was Navarro. "This is Commander J. Navarro, United Terran Front. If this reaches anyone, Anyone who still believes in what we were, know that I didn't die quietly. They tried to erase us. They told the galaxy we were monsters. Maybe we were, but we were alive. And that matters more than any lie. He coughed, blood staining his lips. If Earth is gone, if no one else made it out, let this recording be proof. We were here. We fought. We bled. And we remember. The screen faded to black. The woman's voice was soft. He died a few hours after that, alone, broken, believing no one would hear him. Rez swallowed the lump in his throat. It was too much, too fast, too heavy. So you're doing this for him? No, the man said. We're doing it for everyone like him. The millions who were hunted. The children who never saw Earth. The soldiers turned into shadows. This isn't justice. It's remembrance. Rez looked down at the dog tag still in his hand. For the first time, it didn't feel like a strange piece of metal. It felt like a weight. A truth. So what happens now? He asked. The woman stood. Now, we show the galaxy what they buried. Rez stared at the communication rig. You're going to transmit it? To everyone, she said. Every system, every port, even the ones that banned human media, we're going to infect the lie with truth. Rez hesitated. They'll come for you. They already have, the man said. They just don't know we're inside the walls. Outside, alarms began to blare again. Soft at first, then louder. The humans didn't flinch. The woman looked at Rez. Really looked. You don't have to help. But if you do, it means something. What? That not everyone forgot. Rez stared at her. Then the rig. Then at Navarro's last words, still echoing in his mind. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a historian. But he was someone who saw the lie now. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. He stepped forward and placed the dog tag on the console. I'll help. The man smiled faintly, like he'd been waiting for that all along. Then let's wake the stars. They moved quickly after that. The woman, she finally gave her name. Lyra began routing power from auxiliary cores to boost the old transmitter. Rez watched as she pulled up ancient encryption protocols, bypassing station firewalls like they were made of paper. She wasn't just a rebel. She was a relic-born architect of digital war. The man, now known as Cade, kept watch near the sealed bulkhead. From his stance, Rez could tell he was used to violence. Not the theatrical kind the Accord's enforcers displayed, but the quiet, final kind that left no witnesses. Every part of Rez wanted to panic. The alarms were howling now. Red lights painted the tunnels like veins on fire. Somewhere above them, soldiers were gathering. Accord forces would be here soon, armed and paranoid. We'll have maybe 5 minutes once the signal launches, Lyra said without looking up. The rig's not cloaked. The second it transmits, every surveillance drone in orbit is going to ping its location. Rez cleared his throat. So, we're doing this to die. Lyra smirked. We're doing this so they don't die again. Cade tossed him a rifle. Rez caught it awkwardly, nearly dropping it. I've never used one of these, he admitted. Cade only nodded. Don't shoot unless you have to. But if you do, aim for center mass. They'll be wearing suppressor armor. Rez's fingers tightened around the cold metal. This wasn't supposed to be his fight. He fixed pipes, cleaned reactors. He didn't broadcast forbidden messages to the galaxy or shoot at elite security units. And yet, here he was. The console beeped 3 times. Then a low hum filled the chamber. Lyra's eyes lit up. We're online, she said. Initiating full-spectrum burst. This'll reach every unshielded receiver from here to the Helix barrier. Rez stepped closer as the screen displayed hundreds of symbols, languages from every known species. Below them, a countdown ticked down from 60. Lyra looked up at him. Still in? Rez nodded. They killed the truth once, not again. She hit the final command. The rig pulsed. A wave of energy surged out like a scream in the dark. Navarro's recording began to play, then dozens more like it. Testimonies, footage, photos, archive dumps long thought purged, human cities in flames, Accord soldiers laughing over mass graves, internal communications from officials who signed the extinction orders, the ugly, buried core of galactic peace, now unburied. In orbit, Accord monitors exploded with data they never thought could return. On every trade route, holoscreens flickered, then showed the words, "We were erased. Now we speak." Rez felt it the moment the signal went through, like a dam breaking inside his chest. The room trembled. Outside, a blast shook the corridor. The Accord was coming. Cade sealed the inner hatch. "We hold them here," he said calmly. "They can't stop it now. But they'll try." Rez took position behind a crate, heart pounding so loud it almost drowned the noise. Lyra pulled out a compact pistol and covered the side entrance. Then came the thudding boots, voices, shouts, and then smoke. The door burst open. Rez fired without thinking, and for a moment he thought he missed. But one of the armored soldiers dropped, sparks flying from their chest plate. The firefight erupted. It was fast, brutal. Rez ducked behind piping as shots tore through the air. Cade moved like a phantom. 2 shots, 2 bodies. Lyra shouted something he couldn't hear over the noise. The console sparked. They'd hit something. "No, no, no, hold it!" Lyra screamed, diving for the terminal. "The relay's still transmitting!" Rez saw a soldier raise his rifle toward her. He didn't think. He pulled the trigger. The shot hit. The soldier fell, and Rez couldn't breathe. Lyra looked at him, wide-eyed. "You just saved the truth." He didn't feel like a hero. He felt sick, but he nodded. Outside, more footsteps, more enemies, but above them, in the stars, the message flew, carved into every data stream, every broadcast. The humans were never a myth. They were a warning, and now they're a reckoning. The stars trembled with revelation. Across the galaxy, the message spread like wildfire through vacuum. Entire networks crashed under the weight of incoming data. Civilian hubs blinked in and out of operation. Military AI flagged the transmission as Level 9 forbidden content. And still, it reached billions. On Vol 4, a history professor dropped her tablet as images of Terran children in cages flashed across her screen. She'd taught for 20 years that humans were savages, uncivilized aggressors destroyed for the safety of the stars. Now she watched a human mother shielding her baby during a bombardment she'd been told never happened. In the capital domes of Centauri Prime, protests exploded within hours. Young ones, born after the war, marched with stolen banners showing Earth's crest. They shouted one word in every dialect: lies. In military stations, soldiers hesitated to follow orders. One squad refused to fire on demonstrators. Another broke into their own records room, searching for classified archives, and leaked them. The galaxy had prided itself on order, on unity, but it had built that unity on a graveyard, and the ghosts had started to speak. Back on Tyrik's station, Rez's body ached. Smoke choked the air in the transmission chamber. Lyra was crouched by the console, frantically rerouting power after another hit blew half the system offline. Cade had a gash on his side, dark blood soaking into his coat, but he moved like it didn't exist. Rez's hands were slick with sweat and maybe blood. He couldn't tell anymore. I think we're surrounded," he said, ducking as a blast ripped a piece of piping from the wall above him. "We were always surrounded," Cade growled. "The difference is now they're afraid." Rez swallowed hard. Of 3 people in a frozen cave? No, Lyra muttered. Of the truth being free. She slammed a key, rerouting the last power bank to the transmission relay. Sparks shot up, lighting her face in orange glow. Final packet launching now. The console let out a long beep. Transmission complete. They did it. Lyra collapsed against the wall, exhaustion pulling her limbs like gravity. Outside the room, the Accord forces went silent. No more shots, no more shouting, just a quiet shuffle. Waiting. Then, a message came in, from space, from the Terran fleet. Cade opened the comm, his face unreadable. A woman's voice came through. Cold. Calm. Tyrek Station, this is Earth Command. We received the burst. Your actions have ignited over 93,000 sub-networks. Accord censorship is failing. Stand by for retrieval. Rez blinked. Retrieval? You're sending ships? Lyra asked, sitting up. Number we already sent them. Just then, the ceiling shook. Rez ran to the viewing port, cracked but still intact, and there, piercing through the clouds, came the warships. Not sleek, not quiet. Colossal. Ships shaped like iron bones and ash. Burned emblems on their sides. Their engines didn't hum. They growled, like thunder waking from a long slumber. Accord fighters scrambled. They didn't last 3 seconds. The Terran fleet didn't fire first. They simply arrived. And the message was clear. We are not the hunted anymore. We are the storm. The soldiers outside the room laid down their weapons, one by one. You could hear them clatter against the floor. The door slid open slowly. But it wasn't a firing squad. It was Accord soldiers, hands up, and behind them more civilians. Miners, engineers, people Rez had worked beside for years. None of them looked at him the same way. One of them, an older tech named Baron, stepped forward and said, voice shaking, "We thought they were monsters." Rez nodded. So did I. Baron looked up at the sound of approaching boots, heavy, disciplined, echoing with the sound of iron justice. Terran Marines entered, black-armored and wordless. They saw Cade and Lyra, they saw Rez, and nodded. Cade stepped forward and said only 2 words. Truth holds. The air on Tyrek Station had changed. Where once there was fear and silence, now there was stillness. But not the hopeless kind. This was the stillness that came after a storm, when everything broken could finally be seen in the open. Terran Marines moved through the halls like shadows of judgment. They didn't speak, didn't boast, didn't touch anything unless necessary. Their presence wasn't to conquer, but to witness. Their armor bore the scars of extinction, but their steps carried purpose. Rez sat on the edge of the sub-level 9 platform, feet dangling over a maintenance ledge. Below him, a recovery vessel hovered. Terran tech, shaped like a knife with folded wings. He still wore his grimy overalls. His hands were still calloused from years of work. And yet something inside him had been carved out and replaced with truth. Lyra sat next to him, sipping a sealed ration pack with a crooked grin. "You've got good aim for a mechanic." Rez gave her a side glance. "Don't get used to it. I don't like guns." She nodded slowly. "Neither do I, but sometimes you pick one up because no one else will." Below them, survivors from the station were being processed, not imprisoned, not punished, just talked to. Every person was given a choice: testify or walk away. Most chose to talk. Some wept. Others simply nodded, broken by the weight of a lie they didn't even know they carried. Rez had already spoken to the Terran officer leading the operation. A woman named Vela. Her voice had the calm of someone who'd lost too much to raise it anymore. She'd listened to his account, nodded only once, and said, "You did what billions wouldn't." He hadn't known how to respond. Cade joined them, his side bandaged, movements stiff but steady. He sat down on Rez's other side without a word. For a few moments, none of them spoke. The stars above Tyrix were clearer now. The distortion fields were gone, no longer hiding truth from space. Rez finally broke the silence. What happens next? Cade stared ahead. The galaxy fractures. Lyra added, the Accord will call it terrorism. Some planets will riot, others will try to erase us again, but this time they can't kill the message. The truth's out, Cade said. And the thing about truth, it spreads faster than fear once people realize they've been lied to their whole lives. Rez nodded slowly. And Earth? It's still there? Lyra hesitated, then looked at Cade. Cade's jaw tightened. What's left of it? Rez turned. What does that mean? Cade met his gaze, tired but firm. They didn't just erase us from records. They glassed the planet. Every city, every ocean. The Earth you've heard of. It's a tomb now. Rez's stomach twisted. And you're still fighting for it? Cade shook his head. Number, we're fighting because of it. Earth was our home. But now humanity lives in the memory of what they tried to destroy. Every colony that hit us, every survivor that raised a child in secret, every voice that still dares to speak our name. He looked up at the stars. They thought killing Earth meant killing us. But humans were never just a planet. We're a species, and we're done being quiet. Far above, a new Terran vessel entered orbit. Not a warship this time, but a broadcast ship. Its signal tower unfurled like a steel flower, sending waves of truth across a galaxy built on silence. Back on the station, the surviving citizens of Tyrix gathered to watch. The children stared wide-eyed. The elders stood with shoulders slumped, unsure whether to feel guilt or relief. The message played again. We were never your monsters. You made us into ghosts, but now we are the flame, and you will never forget us again. Rez rose to his feet, the dog tag still around his neck. I want to see what's next, he said quietly. Lyra grinned. Then come with us. Cade offered his hand, and for the first time, Rez took it. Behind them, the station lit up, not with fire but with light. The kind of light that comes after a long, cold night. Because the humans had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Council Chamber was alive with murmurs, a chorus of different species exchanging hushed words. The vast, domed hall shimmered with artificial starlight, an intentional aesthetic meant to inspire unity. Delegates from 100 worlds gathered here, towering reptilians, gelatinous intellects, multi-limbed strategists, and ethereal beings of light. At the center of the room, a hologram flickered to life, displaying a blue-green planet. Earth. High Chancellor Vorthax, a towering insectoid from the Vrunach Dominion, tapped his claws against the stone podium. His voice, a series of clicks and hums translated into the universal language, echoed across the chamber. "We must put this matter to rest. Humans are an anomaly, a species that stumbled into the stars, wielding crude technology and primitive instincts. They fear war. They cling to peace because they know they cannot survive true conflict." There were nods of agreement from many council members. The Ryzak, a species resembling skeletal canines, barked in amusement. The Zalkor, a race of sentient gas clouds, pulsed in approval. Humans had been a thorn in the side of the Galactic Council ever since they discovered FTL travel. Unlike other species who had petitioned for entry, begging to be part of the interstellar order, humans had been difficult. They rejected regulations, refused to abandon their chaotic ways, and worst of all, they had opinions. Opinions they voiced loudly. Ambassador Elias Carter, humanity's lone representative, sat calmly at his station. He was an older man, sharp-eyed but weary. He had sat through years of these meetings, listening to the same rhetoric. The High Chancellor continued. "Humanity will be warned one final time. They will submit to the Council's governance, or they will be—" A sudden, sharp noise cut through the chamber. A laugh. Carter exhaled, shaking his head. A mistake. He hadn't meant to, but the absurdity of it all had finally broken through his restraint. The room went silent. Hundreds of alien eyes turned toward him. "Do you find this amusing, Ambassador Carter?" Vorthax's mandibles twitched in irritation. Carter straightened. "I just find it funny, Chancellor. You say humans fear war, that we cling to peace because we can't survive it." He leaned forward, hands clasped together. "Let me ask you a question. Do any of you know what happens when humans go to war?" The silence was palpable. Carter smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You think we fear war? Number, we hate war. There's a difference. We hate it because we know what we are capable of when it starts." Vorthax clicked his mandibles in irritation. "Bluster. Humanity's record shows that your wars are frequent and senseless. Your history is filled with destruction for petty reasons. This only proves your inferiority." Carter shook his head. "You don't get it. Other species go to war for resources, for power, for expansion. But when humans fight, when we truly commit to war, we don't stop until we've turned the enemy to dust. We wage total war, no half measures, no mercy. We adapt, we endure, and we break our enemies in ways they don't even understand until it's too late." A tense silence spread through the chamber. A few members shifted uncomfortably. "Are you threatening us, Ambassador?" Carter exhaled slowly. "No, Chancellor. I'm warning you." A murmur of laughter rippled through the chamber. The Ryzak delegate sneered, a guttural growl escaping its throat. "You speak as if we should fear a backwater race of primitives. You have no fleets, no warships, no armies. Your people have never seen a true intergalactic conflict. What do you have that could possibly make us afraid?" Carter glanced at his datapad. A notification blinked on the screen. They had received the message. It was done. He smiled, this time genuinely. "Oh, I think you'll find out soon enough." Across the vastness of space, the first human warships decloaked above the capital world of the Galactic Council. They had been waiting in the system for days, watching, calculating. And now they were done waiting. The first missiles launched, and the Galactic Council learned the truth about humanity. The first explosion shattered the illusion of peace. The Galactic Council's capital world, Vorlune 5, had never known war. It was the beating heart of the civilized galaxy, a planet where negotiations, diplomacy, and treaties had replaced the crude violence of lesser species. But that changed the moment the first human warheads detonated in orbit. The council chamber trembled. The glow of artificial starlight flickered, replaced by the harsh red glare of emergency alarms. Delegates cried out in alarm as the entire structure rumbled beneath them. High Chancellor Vorthax's mandibles twitched in shock. His compound eyes darted toward the vast holographic display in the center of the chamber. It now showed a terrifying sight. Dozens of human warships emerging from the void, weapons systems active. What is the meaning of this? Ambassador Elias Carter remained seated, calm as ever. His hands were folded neatly on the table, but there was something in his gaze. Something cold and unyielding. You wanted an answer, he said. Now you have it. Another explosion rocked the surface of Vorlon 5. The planetary defense grid had barely activated before human strike teams began systematically dismantling it. Laser turrets went offline. Shield generators exploded in plumes of fire. Humans had studied the Council's security systems, and now, with surgical precision, they were tearing through them. The room descended into chaos. The Ryzak delegate bared his fangs in rage. "This is an act of war! You humans are insane!" Carter chuckled. "We're just efficient." Vorthax slammed a clawed fist against the podium. "This is madness. Humanity has never been a threat to the Council. You lack the military strength to—" The doors of the chamber burst open. Council guards, armed with plasma rifles, stormed in, escorting a new arrival. A figure clad in sleek black armor, the insignia of Earth's unified fleet command displayed proudly on his chest. Admiral Nathaniel Graves. He was an imposing figure, his presence exuding a quiet authority that demanded attention. His uniform was unblemished, his dark eyes calculating. He surveyed the room, then turned toward Carter. "It's done," Graves said. Carter nodded. "Losses?" "Minimal. Defense grid neutralized. The planetary fleet is surrendering." Vorthax's eyes widened in horror. "Impossible!" But the proof was all around them. The trembling of the chamber, the alarms, the smoke rising from the cityscape beyond the great glass windows. Admiral Graves turned toward the council members. His voice was measured, but there was no mistaking the steel behind his words. "We did not come here to negotiate," he said. "For years, the Council has mocked humanity, ignored us, treated us like children at your table. You assumed we were weak because we did not seek war." He took a step forward, his gaze sweeping over the assembled delegates. "That was your mistake." Carter leaned back, watching as the room finally grasped the situation. "Humans don't start wars," he said, "but we end them." A hologram flickered to life beside Graves, a live feed from Vorlon 5's orbital station. It showed the Council's own fleets, hundreds of ships, their weapons offline, their crews surrendering to human forces. The silence in the chamber was deafening. Then, Carter spoke again. "You called us primitive. You called us fearful. But you never stopped to ask yourselves why we avoided war." He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "It's not because we fear it. It's because we know what happens when we embrace it." Graves turned toward the High Chancellor. "Your capital is under our control. Your fleets are in our custody. Your world is at our mercy." Vorthax's mandibles twitched, his body frozen in disbelief. Carter exhaled slowly. "Now, Chancellor, let's talk about new terms." War had come to the Galactic Council, and they had never been more afraid. Smoke curled into the sky above Vorlon 5. What had once been the pristine capital of the Galactic Council now bore the scars of war. A war they never saw coming. The once invincible planetary defenses were gone. The Council's fleets, which had stood as a symbol of universal peace, now floated in orbit, powerless, their crews detained by human forces. Inside the council chamber, the silence was thick with unspoken fear. Admiral Graves stood at the center of the room, his gaze sweeping across the assembled delegates. Many of them, creatures of power and arrogance just hours ago, now trembled in their seats. They had spent centuries dictating the laws of the galaxy. Now, they were at the mercy of humans. Graves turned his attention to High Chancellor Vorthax. The once imposing leader of the council now looked small. His mandibles twitched as his claws gripped the podium. "You can't do this," Vorthax said, his voice lacking its usual authority. The council is over," Graves interrupted, his tone flat, absolute. It failed. It believed war was a relic of the past, that peace was the natural order of things. He leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "You were wrong." Carter, still seated, let out a slow breath. "For years, we warned you. We tried diplomacy. We played by your rules. And every time you mocked us, treated us like children, you thought we feared war." He shook his head. "But the truth is, we feared what we would have to become if war ever found us." Vorthax bared his fangs. "You think you can just take control? Humanity is one species. The rest of the galaxy will rise against you." Graves smirked. "You still don't get it, do you?" A hologram flickered to life above the chamber, showing dozens of alien fleets across the galaxy. Some were mobilizing, but not for war. For surrender. The humans hadn't just attacked Vorlon 5. Their forces had struck simultaneously at multiple key locations, council-controlled shipyards, communication hubs, and military strongholds. It had taken them mere hours to dismantle centuries of intergalactic power. The room erupted in panic. Council members shouted over one another, their voices filled with desperation. The reality was sinking in. They hadn't just lost a battle. They had lost the war before they even knew it had begun. Vorthax's claws clenched. "You will never be accepted as rulers of the galaxy. The other species will resist." Carter let out a short laugh. "We don't want to rule the galaxy, Chancellor. That's what you still don't understand. Humanity doesn't need an empire." He gestured toward the hologram. "We don't need to force anyone to accept our terms, because they've already chosen to." Graves nodded. "The moment your fleets fell, the truth became clear to every species in the council. Their leaders failed them. They put their faith in a system that was built on illusion, the illusion that war would never return." His expression darkened. "But war is the natural state of the universe, and humanity? We mastered it." The Ryzak delegate slammed a fist onto the table. "Then what do you want? If not power, then what?" Graves turned toward Carter, who exhaled and finally stood. He walked slowly to the center of the chamber, his steps echoing in the silence. "We want order," Carter said. Vorthax let out a sharp hiss. "That's what the council provided." Carter's eyes flashed with something dark. "Number. That's what you pretended to provide. The council was never about peace. It was about control. You kept weaker species in line through bureaucracy, through regulations that benefited the powerful while ensuring others remained stagnant." He took another step forward. "You talk about fear, Chancellor. But it was never humans who feared war." His gaze swept across the room. "It was all of you." He gestured toward the shattered world outside. "And when you finally poked the sleeping bear, when you finally saw what humanity could do, you realized the truth." A heavy silence settled over the room. Humanity had been underestimated. Now the galaxy would never make that mistake again. Graves turned to Vorthax. His voice was steady, final. "The council is finished. From this moment forward, the galaxy will operate under a new system, one that doesn't ignore reality." He took a step back, crossing his arms. "Now, Chancellor, you have two choices." Vorthax swallowed hard. What choices?" Carter's smile returned, sharp, merciless. cooperate, or be an example. The Galactic Council had ruled for centuries. In a single day, it was erased. And the universe finally understood what humans truly were. Not conquerors, not diplomats, not cowards. Humans were survivors, and when pushed, they became something far worse. The weight of humanity's ultimatum hung over the chamber like a storm cloud. No one spoke, no one moved. High Chancellor Vorthax, once the most powerful being in the galaxy, sat frozen. His mandibles twitched, his clawed hands gripping the podium so tightly that cracks formed along its surface. The other delegates, the proud leaders of species that had shaped the universe, avoided his gaze. Because they all knew the truth. The Galactic Council was finished. What? What would cooperation entail? Vorthax's voice was barely above a whisper. Admiral Graves tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. It means humanity will oversee the transition to a new order. The Council's authority is revoked, effective immediately. A murmur of fear spread through the chamber. The Zal Kor delegate, a creature of shifting, luminous gases, pulsed anxiously. And if we refuse? Carter's voice was soft, almost casual. Then you'll learn what happens when humans stop holding back. Vorthax's eyes darted toward the holographic projection. The footage of Vorlon V's orbital fleet still played in real time. His once mighty warships, symbols of the Council's strength, were now lined up, powerless, under the control of humanity's forces. The reality was undeniable. You planned this, Vorthax rasped. His voice was hoarse with disbelief. You set this up for years. Carter finally sighed. Of course we did. A new hologram flickered to life. It was Earth. But not as the Council had ever seen it before. For decades, the Council had believed humans were little more than a minor species, capable of some advancements, sure, but nothing compared to the great empires of the cosmos. They had seen Earth as a thriving but unremarkable world, an isolated civilization that had just barely scratched the surface of space travel. But that wasn't what the hologram showed now. The projection revealed a network of hidden orbital shipyards, colossal construction facilities that had never been registered with the Council. Dotted along the dark side of the moon, buried under the storms of Jupiter, concealed in the asteroid belt. Dozens, hundreds, thousands, and within those shipyards, fleets, massive black-armored warships, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Some of them dwarfed the Council's largest battleships. Others bristled with weapons that the universe didn't even have classifications for yet. It was not the fleet of a primitive species. It was the fleet of a civilization that had prepared for this moment for a very, very long time. The entire chamber stared in stunned horror. Carter folded his arms. Did you really think we were just floating through space, hoping for the best? His voice carried an edge of amusement. Number. The moment we realized how the Council saw us, how you belittled us, how you dismissed us, we understood what needed to be done. He gestured towards the hologram. You thought we feared war. You thought we couldn't handle it. But in reality, we've been waiting. The Zal Kor delegate stammered, their gaseous form flickering wildly. But the regulations, we never followed them. Admiral Graves finally spoke, his tone like iron on stone. For years, we let you believe we were weak, that we were scattered, disorganized, that our fleets were small, that we had no real military force. He let the words settle. But that was a lie. A new projection appeared beside him. A recorded video feed taken from a Council intelligence drone, one that had infiltrated human space years ago. It showed military training facilities unlike anything the Council had. Endless stretches of land, where human soldiers trained in conditions so brutal, no other species could have survived them. Urban warfare simulations, harsh planetary environments, zero-gravity combat drills, and most horrifying of all, weapons testing. Weapons the galaxy had no defense against. Carter turned back to Vorthax. "We knew this day would come, and when it did," he smiled, cold and merciless, "we made sure we'd be the ones to finish it." Vorthax was shaking now. The mighty Galactic Council, the ruling power of the cosmos for centuries, had been outplayed, outmatched, and outmaneuvered by the very species they had looked down upon. "You were never in control," Graves said, his voice calm and final. "You just thought you were." Silence. Then, slowly, the Ryzak delegate, one of the most vicious, warlike species in the council, stood up and bowed. His canine-like snout lowered in submission. A moment later, the Zalcor delegate did the same. Then another, and another. Within minutes, every single delegate in the room had bowed before humanity. Vorthax remained standing, his body trembling with fury, with humiliation. He hated them. He hated that they had been so blind, that they had never seen this coming. But he hated one thing even more: the fact that, deep down, he now understood why humans were feared, and why, from this day forward, the galaxy would never, ever challenge them again. The chamber remained silent, thick with the weight of a new reality. The Galactic Council was no longer the dominant force of the universe. Humanity had shattered that illusion. Vorthax stood frozen, his mind a storm of disbelief and seething rage. He had spent centuries securing the galactic order, ensuring that war remained a relic of the past. But now, war had returned, and it had a human face. "You think you've won," he rasped, his mandibles clicking together as he forced himself to meet Carter's gaze. "But you don't understand what you've just done. You may have taken Vorlon 5, but you've made enemies across the entire galaxy. The independent factions, the warlords, the rogue empires, they will never bow to you." Carter exhaled, shaking his head. "I keep hearing this same tired argument from you, Chancellor." His voice remained level, but there was something dangerous beneath the surface. "And every time, you fail to grasp the situation." He took a step forward. "You think we want them to bow?" He let the question hang in the air. "Number, we want them to fight." A ripple of shock passed through the chamber. The Zalcor delegate shifted uneasily. "You want more war?" Graves spoke this time. "You misunderstand." His voice was calm, deliberate. "Humanity doesn't seek war for the sake of conquest, but if war is inevitable, we believe in finishing it completely." He stepped toward the central hologram and gestured, bringing up new data streams, intelligence reports that no one in the chamber should have had access to. The room tensed as the information scrolled across the screen. Every major criminal empire, every hidden warlord faction, every rogue fleet that operated outside the Council's influence. The Council had never been able to stop them. Their influence had ended at the edge of negotiation tables. Humanity, however, they had already tracked them all down. "This is impossible," Vorthax muttered. "You have intelligence on factions we haven't been able to locate for centuries." Carter smirked. "Well, maybe that's because we don't negotiate with them." He flicked his wrist, and a second projection appeared. It showed battle footage, but not from Vorlon 5. Across the galaxy, at this very moment, human strike teams were already hitting key warlord territories. The dreaded Skari pirate lords, neutralized, the infamous Bloodfang marauders, crushed before they even knew what hit them. The ruthless Korth Dominion, a splinter empire that had defied the Council for generations. Their fleet was burning. It had all been happening simultaneously. The Council thought humanity had only attacked them, but humans had waged war on the entire underbelly of the galaxy, at once. Vorthax's legs nearly buckled. How did you coordinate this? Graves tilted his head slightly. You assumed we were just now revealing our strength. But the truth is, we've been working in the shadows for years. You didn't see our ships because they were never in open space. You didn't see our soldiers because they were already behind enemy lines. Carter smiled. You spent decades looking down on us, and we spent decades digging graves for the warlords you were too weak to stop. A new broadcast appeared on the hologram, this one from a live news channel across the galaxy. Species across the cosmos were watching it unfold in real time. They saw the pirate fleets burning. They saw the corrupt warlords dying in sudden coordinated assassinations. They saw the hidden underworld of the galaxy collapsing in mere hours. And they saw who was responsible. The humans. Carter turned back to Vorthax, watching the last remnants of his arrogance crumble. This is what you never understood, Carter said. His voice was almost gentle now, like a teacher explaining something to a slow student. You ruled through bureaucracy, through laws that criminals ignored, through a peace that only worked because no one challenged it. He took a step forward, his gaze locking onto Vorthax's trembling form. But peace isn't given. His voice lowered. Peace is enforced. The chamber was dead silent. The Rizak delegate, who had once mocked humanity, stood slowly. His sharp, wolf-like eyes were filled with something that wasn't fear anymore. It was respect. And then, he spoke. The council was weak. It failed. He turned toward Carter and Graves. Humanity has proven its strength, and I will stand beside it. Whispers spread through the chamber. One by one, the remaining delegates stood, pledging their allegiance. The council was dead, and humanity had just reshaped the entire galaxy. Vorthax collapsed into his chair, defeated, broken. He had spent centuries believing humans were inferior. Now he realized the truth. Humanity had never feared war. They had simply been waiting for the rest of the galaxy to catch up. The Galactic Council was dead. Not in name alone, but in purpose, in spirit, in the authority it once wielded over the cosmos. Humanity had smashed it apart in a single, calculated stroke. But taking power was one thing. Holding it? Another entirely. Vorlon 5, once a pristine beacon of diplomacy, was now occupied. The flag of the unified Terran Federation flew over its capital. Human warships hovered in low orbit, keeping watch over the shattered remains of the old order. Admiral Graves stood atop the council's grand balcony, the highest point of the city. From here, he could see the skyline. Smoke rising from pockets of resistance, the shattered remnants of once glorious council buildings. It was a symbol of a new era. You know this won't be easy. Carter stepped beside him, the ever-calm diplomat watching the city below. Graves exhaled, his expression unreadable. Nothing worth doing ever is. A cold wind cut through the balcony. Below, human troops moved with precise efficiency, securing government buildings and rounding up former council leaders who had refused to surrender. Some fought, some fled, but none escaped the inevitable. We didn't come here to rule, Carter said after a moment. Graves nodded. No, we didn't. But we also can't just walk away. The moment we do, the galaxy will tear itself apart. That was the reality of it. The council had held everything together, no matter how flawed it had been. Without it, there would be chaos, power vacuums, rogue factions seeking to fill the void, and even though humanity had dismantled the old order, they now found themselves in an even more dangerous position. They had become the new center of power, and now the entire galaxy was watching them. Across the cosmos, the shockwaves of humanity's victory were still unfolding. Some species rejoiced. For the first time in history, the corrupt elite of the Galactic Council had been toppled. Planets that had once been ignored, left to suffer under bureaucracy and indifference, saw hope in humanity's rise. On worlds where the Council had failed to protect its people, there were celebrations in the streets. The old order had been shattered, and many believed that humanity would bring something better. But there were others who saw only terror. The remaining warlords and rogue states didn't celebrate, they panicked. The criminal underworld had thrived under the Council's corruption, and now their empires were collapsing as humans hunted them down one by one. Entire fleets fled into deep space, hoping to escape humanity's wrath, and some, in desperation, began forging new alliances. "They're consolidating," said Colonel Harlow, an intelligence officer who had just arrived from Earth. He stood in the newly established Human Command Center, deep within the Council's former government district. He flicked his wrist, bringing up a holographic display of the galaxy. Red markers blinked across multiple sectors, factions preparing for war. The remnants of the Korth Dominion, the Skari holdouts, and at least 3 independent warlords are forming a coalition, Harlow continued. They're calling themselves the Vanguard Compact. Carter raised an eyebrow. Dramatic. "They're desperate," Graves muttered. "They know they can't fight us alone, so now they're trying to do the one thing criminals have never been good at, unifying." Harlow zoomed in on a sector at the edge of the galaxy. "We intercepted a transmission. The Vanguard Compact has chosen their new stronghold, Kelros 9. Graves studied the display. "How well defended?" "Heavily. They're pulling everything they have to fortify it. We estimate thousands of ships, planetary defenses, and ground troops." A brief silence passed. Then Carter sighed. "Do we need to handle them, or do we let them be?" Graves didn't hesitate. "We handle them. Swiftly, brutally, completely." Harlow nodded. "A preemptive strike, then?" Graves folded his arms. "Number, not just a strike." His eyes darkened. "An example." Carter exhaled slowly. He knew this was necessary. If they showed any hesitation now, the galaxy would descend into endless war. Humanity had ended the first war. Now they had to prevent the next one. Graves turned toward Harlow. "Mobilize the fleets. Inform the generals. We move on Kelros 9 immediately." Humanity had proven its strength. Now it was time to remind the galaxy why they feared it. The sky above Kelros 9 burned. Humanity had arrived. From the moment the Terran Armada emerged from hyperspace, the battle was inevitable. The Vanguard Compact, desperate and cornered, had thrown everything they had into fortifying this world. Thousands of ships, pirate cruisers, black market dreadnoughts, and stolen Council battleships formed a desperate blockade. They had one chance to hold the line, but against humanity, that chance was an illusion. Admiral Graves stood at the command deck of the UTS Warborn, a dreadnought unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human warships weren't designed for posturing or diplomatic deterrence. They were weapons of annihilation, built for war and nothing else. And now that war had begun. "Status?" Graves asked, his voice calm. A fleet officer turned from his station. "Enemy ships holding formation, sir. Their lead vessels are trying to establish comms." Graves smirked. "Let them talk. It won't matter." The screen flickered to life, revealing a haggard-looking alien warlord, a Korthian, his scaled face twisted in rage. "You madmen don't understand what you've done! You can't wipe us all out!" Graves tilted his head. "We're not wiping you out," he said, his voice cold as steel. "We're correcting a mistake." The Korthian bared his fangs. "If you come for us, humanity will be known as tyrants. Do you want the galaxy to see you as butchers?" Graves let out a slow breath. "The galaxy feared war," he said. "We ended the last one before it could begin." His gaze sharpened. "Now, we're ensuring there won't be another." He turned to his officers. "Fire." The first volley struck like an act of God. Human weapons weren't just stronger, they were smarter. They anticipated the enemy's movements, guided by battlefield AI that outmatched anything the Council had ever conceived. In seconds, the Vanguard Compact's first line of ships vanished, engulfed in nuclear fire, plasma bursts, and kinetic rounds traveling at relativistic speeds. Panic spread through the enemy ranks. They had fortified Kelros 9, thinking it would be a sanctuary. Instead, they had built themselves a tomb. The Terran Armada advanced. On the surface of Kelros 9, alarms screamed as human drop pods rained down from the sky like falling meteors. Inside each pod, elite human shock troopers sat in grim silence. Men and women trained from birth for war. Soldiers who had been forged in environments too brutal for any other species to survive. As their pods slammed into the battlefield, the doors burst open, and the storm began. Humanity had arrived, and there would be no survivors. Carter watched from orbit as the planet below was systematically dismantled. The Vanguard Compact's last stronghold was dying. It had taken less than an hour for the largest criminal empire in the galaxy to fall. He turned to Graves. "The survivors?" Graves didn't blink. "There won't be any." Carter exhaled. He knew it had to be this way. The only way to ensure peace was to leave no one left to challenge it. The war wasn't won in battles. It was won in the fear that followed them. And now the galaxy knew. If you stood against humanity, you didn't just lose. You ceased to exist. Kelros 9 burned for 3 days. When it was over, the last enemies of humanity were gone. The war was over. And the galaxy now belonged to humans. The fires of Kelros 9 had long since died. The war was over. The Vanguard Compact was gone. The last true threats to humanity's rule had been erased from existence. And now, the galaxy held its breath. Vorlon 5, once the capital of the Galactic Council, had become the seat of a new order. The banners of the unified Terran Federation now hung over the great halls where the old rulers once dictated policy. But humanity did not rebuild the Council. They had no interest in another bureaucratic monstrosity filled with corruption, delay, and useless diplomacy. Instead, the galaxy now operated under a new system, one dictated not by endless negotiation, but by order. Human order. Carter stood in the former council chamber, now repurposed into the command center of the Galactic Stabilization Initiative. He wasn't alone. Representatives from dozens of species sat in tense silence. Leaders of planets and civilizations that had once feared humanity, now forced to acknowledge their power. At the center of it all, Admiral Graves sat with his usual unshakable presence. Carter took a breath. Now came the hard part. "You all know why you're here," Carter began. His voice was calm but firm. "The war is over, the Council is gone, and the galaxy must now move forward." A murmur passed through the room. The Zalcor delegate, still shifting anxiously, spoke first. "Under whose rule?" Graves leaned forward. "Ours." The tension thickened. "So humanity truly seeks an empire," growled the Ryzak war chief. "You claim you didn't come to rule, yet here we are." Carter shook his head. "You misunderstand. Humanity doesn't seek dominion. We seek stability." He gestured to the holographic display. It showed the galaxy as it now stood, united under a single military presence, with no factions left to challenge the new status quo. For the first time in history, war had truly ended. "For centuries," Carter continued, "the Council let chaos fester. They convinced themselves that war was a relic of the past, that diplomacy could solve everything, and in doing so, they let monsters thrive." His gaze swept over the room. "Humanity corrected that mistake, and we will ensure that mistake is never made again." The Zalcor delegate hesitated. And what if another warlord rises? Another faction that seeks to break this peace? Graves' expression didn't change. Then we do what humans do best, he said. We end it. Cold silence. They all understood. Humanity wasn't interested in ruling every aspect of the galaxy. They had no interest in controlling every planet, every law, every civilian government. But the moment anyone threatened peace, humanity would return, and they would erase the threat before it had a chance to grow. This was no empire. This was the iron will of a species that had mastered war. Carter glanced at Graves. The mission was complete. The galaxy had feared war for centuries, and now the galaxy feared humanity, not because they sought power, but because they had proven, beyond any doubt, that they were the only ones who truly understood how to wield it. And so, the age of the Terran peace began. Not built on empty words, not built on fragile treaties, but built on the absolute certainty that if war ever threatened the stars again, humanity would return, and this time they wouldn't leave anything behind.